This is my first drone in the FPV hobby, and if you're like me, you probably started from something very similar. But eventually there'll come a time where you want to upgrade to something bigger and faster. Now the most iconic and pretty much the standard in the FPV hobby is the 5-inch drone. Now there's a vast amount of options in this segment, but time and time again one name keeps popping up, and that's the Nazgul line. So today we're taking a look at the Iflight Nazgul 5 V2 and see if this is still the best choice for your first 5-inch drone. Okay, so here's the box right here. Pretty nice white box, pretty typical of Iflight. You have the Iflight logo here, where dreams can fly. Pretty cool, catchy phrase. And on the back here, you have the specifications for my drone specifically. Now, Iflight gives you a lot of options. I mean, a lot of options to spec your drones out. Now, at the time when I bought this drone, this was over a year ago. This was just at the beginning of the chip shortage. And shortly after, a lot of the specifications on this drone were changing or began to change. So stuff like your flight controller, this has a F4 flight control on here, but now they have them with F7s and some other options like the Blitz F7 flight controller as well. So these things can change depending on when you purchase this. I have my unboxing knife right here, just one tamper-proof seal. Open this thing up. All right, so let's open up and see what's in here. So a nice black foam here. Then the first thing I see here are two sets of props, and that's pretty good, guys. A 5-inch drone is usually used for freestyle maneuvers or bando bashing, so they probably know that you're gonna be taking some risk with these, drones. So it's cool that they included 2 sets of props. These things are pretty cool too. Besides that, you have a bag of goodies on here. Looks like you have a battery mat, some prop nuts, and then an antenna. And then you have a micro USB cord here to interface with your flight controller. Now over here you have a whole bunch of wires here. These look like spare wires to interface between the flight controller, the VTX, and then the ESC. So it's cool that they have a lot of spares. That's kind of unheard of. And then we have your wrench and a bolt here, most likely for your action camera when you mount this to the drone. Now here's the drone. Let's take this thing out. Ooh, this thing is awesome, guys. Look at this thing. Wow. And you can just tell from the get-go, there's a lot of like stickers and placards all over this drone, which is amazing. Now this is my first 5-inch quad, and this thing, first impressions, it's beefy, guys. Very, very strong. All right, so let's take a closer look at this drone. And guys, there's a lot going on here. The first thing that's apparent, as I said before, is just all these instructions, and that's one of multiple reasons why this is the perfect first time 5-inch drone, guys. It just tells you almost everything what to do. Another thing that stands out is just these bright TPU prints everywhere, and they're pretty much protection for this drone. So they thought about almost everything to protect in your investment, as well as making it look aesthetically pleasing. A lot of this stuff here is kind of distracting, as I said before, so let's remove some of these placards. The first ones are these motors. Let's take these off. Before you take them off, that's very important if you're not going to go into beta flight, but you can see that these things are rotating outwards. So these are a prop out configuration. So before I begin everything here, let's just take these off. All right, so that's the first thing. We'll leave the others for now until we do the setup. But this thing looks really nice, guys. Really nice looking frame, carbon fiber everywhere. These arms are huge, guys. Now these are 5mm arms, so pretty strong, robust. They can probably take a lot of hits for sure. But let's put this on the scale and see how much this thing weighs. The website says it weighs around 393 grams, but let's see what it shows on my scale here. Okay, 370, that's without the props. Put the props on there. 390. Oh, that's pretty close. All right, for me, the first thing that pops out here are these big old bell housing for these motors. These are the Zing E Pros. These are the 2207 1800 kV. So this is a 6S drone. I did have the option to go with the 4S, but I figured since I'm going to go to my first 5-inch quad, I might as well invest in this, embrace the technology, embrace the hobby, and go straight to go to 6S. Now the props aren't installed on here. As we talked about, the props go outward. These are the Iflight props. These are obviously 5-inch props. And I've also bought some extras. Now this thing is pretty cool with this color, this like neon yellow or neon green. Pretty nice, it stands out. Besides that, you have these plastic covers here for the motor wires. Now these give it a nice touch, makes it look very tidy and clean. Some people love and some people hate these things, but it doesn't bother me. Only when it's time to, like, say, do some repairs, like change a motor, then you have to fish these wires through here. It might be a pain in the butt, but these things are really nice and neat. All right, so coming to the front here, you have your camera, your FPV camera. It looks really nice. This is the Caddx Ratel. Nice placement, obviously adjustable camera on here. It's really cool that it's protected very, very well. So I don't see anywhere this thing is gonna get damaged. Really nice. Now this camera here, I've used the Ratel V2 multiple times and it's a pretty decent camera, not bad at all. Now coming to the back here, you have your VTX. It's a pretty large VTX here, your Success Force VTX here. Now this one here is power adjustable. 800 milliwatts is the max output. And you have a connector here so you can put your antenna to the VTX here, which is actually included in here. I may or may not use this. I might just use it initially, but I did buy separate antennas for this, so a little bit longer range antenna, but it does have an SMA connector on the back here. Talking about antennas, we're on the back here. We also have antennas back here for our receiver. Now, as I said before, this drone can be spec'd out multiple ways. I did go with the XM Plus receiver, although it doesn't give you the best for range. This was one of the few options I could get this drone in for a good price and at the time. So maybe eventually I'll change the receiver on here for sure, especially at the time I purchased this, there was no Express LRS available. That wasn't a thing yet. Talking about that, this sticker here tells you how to bind. There's a bind button right here. And it says the receiver is on UART2. All right, since we're back here, we have this XT60 plug, and there's another label on here warning. It says, so Bind and Fly has been tested indoors only. Never plug in battery without the antenna installed. So although it's not attached to the antenna, it's just saying don't, power this up without a VTX antenna, which makes perfect sense. There's one more on here. For best performance, place battery in the center of gravity. And there's one more warning. Let's see what it says on here. There's so many of these things on here. I'm an Iflight pre-tuned bind and fly, just bind and fly. Be careful when changing parameters. This could occur unexpected during flight behavior. Now this is a pretty interesting one here, which is really cool. It says angle mode, self-balancing level mode is enabled by default to make sure your first flight doesn't end in a mess. So they're thinking about beginners for sure. Talking about angle mode, we have our flight controller in here and ESC stack. Now the ESC is a 45 amp ESC, and as I said before, the flight controller is an F4 flight controllers. But most likely you're not gonna get this since they've changed these flight controllers numerous times due to the chip shortage. Most likely you're gonna get either a Blitz or a traditional F4 flight controller. Now under the drone, looks pretty good. These plates are very, very thick, very, very huge. The first thing that jumps out is this little Iflight logo on here, and this is an LED light, so this thing is gonna light up once you power it on. Besides that, you have these TPU mounts on here for protecting the carbon fiber on here. And talking about the carbon fiber, as I said before, these things are 5mm thick. If you do break one of these, you can just replace the arm, and you have these hardware here to actually replace those. Besides that, this thing looks really good, guys. The thing that stands out to me is just all these colors, these contrasting colors. The designers did a really good job choosing that color, and it does stick out from the other drones on the market. So yeah, guys, this thing comes almost ready to go. Obviously, it's a bind and fly, but we are just gonna go to the computer, attach a battery to this, bind this to my radio, set up the modes in Betaflight, and then put some props in here and go for a flight, guys. Okay, so we're at the computer here. We have our drone here. I have a micro USB cable plugged to it. I'm just gonna try to bind my receiver to my radio first. And I do have my antenna to my VTX connected, as this sticker did say. So you don't wanna power this drone up without having an antenna connected to your VTX. Now the process for these receivers are very tricky if you don't have a smoke stopper, but they want you to press the bind button while powering up the drone, while connecting the battery. So I have my driver here. I'm gonna press the bind button and then power the drone at the same time. All right, it should be in bind mode. And if I hit the bind button here, let's see if that works. I don't know.
Armed, disarmed, armed.
Power that off. These things are so finicky sometimes.
Armed, disarmed, flight mode acro.
Okay guys, so a quick update. I couldn't get my radio to bind to my receiver or to my drone, and I can't proceed to beta flight until I have my receiver bound to my radio so I can assign my switches and change the modes. And that's happened because, as I said before, this has a XM Plus, which is a FR Sky receiver in here. And in typical fashion, yes, this has the updated version here, ACCST 2.1.2. So this is a 2.0 receiver in here, and my radio has the 1.3 or whatever version firmware on my radios. Even my other newer radio has the same thing. Unless you have a FR Sky receiver, which you can update either the firmware in your radio or the firmware on your receiver, then you're pretty much out of luck. Now, I was kind of anticipating that. My eventual goal was to go to an Express LRS. In fact, at the time, there was no Express LRS. I actually planned on doing the Crossfire Nano Module to this drone. I guess it's gonna take a little bit longer than I expected. So let's go to the workbench and I'll slap this receiver in here. All right, so we're here at the bench. I have my drone here, and I also got my little schematic here from the box here, which is pretty cool. This is really helpful. I almost didn't look at this, but this is gonna save my bacon, if you're gonna say that. Because looking at this, I saw that the receiver was actually plugged into the flight controller. Nothing is soldered on, it's all plugged in. And that's the reason why we have all these connections right here. So this is actually gonna be a really good thing if it does work. So I did pull out one of these harness right here, and it has 4 strands, which is really good. This is gonna wire straight into my receiver. I can do this all outside of the drone. And then when I'm ready, just plug it in into a port and we should be good. And that's the plan. Anyways, for now, let's just get this top plate off. Looks like we have 8 screws on here. All right, top plate should be free. Now the receiver is mounted to the top plate. Actually, it isn't. Sweet, take that off. I'm gonna remove this TPU mount on here. All right, so it's as simple as just unplugging this port out. We are good. That's gonna work out pretty good. All right guys, so I was having some issues here with this receiver here. Actually, was the flight controller. And every time I connected this to power, it would just stay in bootloader mode. It wouldn't do anything, no response. So I did have to put a pull-up resistor on here, and I just put it in line here from the 5 volts to the RX on the receiver. I did use I think it was a 1000 ohm resistor on here. And it seems to work now. It doesn't go into bootloader mode, so this is good. I'm just gonna put a shrink wrap on here if I can find the right size. This one here is too small. I have my hot air gun here. I think that's hot pretty fast. And let's just shrink this thing. All right, this looks good. Make sure everything looks good in there before I power it up. All right, but let's power this up. All right, I have telemetry. All right, so that worked. It just tripped the smoke stopper. Perfect. All right. Let's reassemble. This looks good. All right, let's do this. All right, now we're gonna go to the computer, set up our switches in Betaflight, and then install these propellers. Okay, so we're back at the table here. We have our drone here. We now have our Express LRS antenna installed back here. Plug this puppy in here. All right, I have telemetry, which is good. And as you can see, I'm still using UART number 2 serial RX, which was the FR Sky receiver that came with this drone. Besides that, everything else should be fine. All I did was go in here, though, and change it to Crossfire. So if you go to your receiver tab, and I just chose Crossfire here instead. All right, so now we're gonna power up the VTX, put this on, see what it looks like in my goggles. All right guys, this thing here is now configured. Our switches are set. We have a receiver. Everything is bound. We have our OSD set up pretty well. So yeah, let's go to the table, install the props, maybe install the camera, and then go for a flight. Okay, so we're back at the table. We have our drone here, pretty nice. So we have our Express LRS receiver now installed on here. So let's start off with this battery mat here. Pretty straightforward. You just line this up with the holes here, and all the ventilation lines are lined up. There you go, that looks pretty good. Next thing is the props. We have these props right here, really nice looking. This one's gonna be going this way, so that's gonna be a forward one. They all went on pretty snug. We have our nuts on here, or they have the nylon on the end so it can't back out, which is a good feature. You don't want these things backing out in flight and losing a prop, so all right, these things aren't going anywhere. All right, talking about antenna, let's just screw this one on here. I might fly with this one first. This is the stock antenna it came with. It looks like a really nice premium antenna. It looks like a circular polarized. All right, last but not least, let's put this camera on here and see if this works. See how compatible this is. I'll be using my GoPro Hero 8 Black here, and these things are pretty cool. They have the legs built into the camera, just extended out. And yeah, that should work. Yeah. And then you just use the wrench to tighten this thing. I'm excited to fly this thing. I should weigh this. This thing feels kind of girthy, pretty heavy. All right, so here's the scale right here. Let's take a look at how heavy this thing is with the action camera and the props on here. 523 grams. All right, so obviously it's over 250 grams. I already have this drone registered with the FAA, believe it or not. When I bought it, I just registered it. I know it's gonna be over 250 grams. We're gonna start off with the 4S. Let's see, 716, pretty beefy. 740, and then here's the big boys here, 1300. 760, 59 maybe, and then the largest one. Wow, 790 grams. So this thing is gonna be like a projectile with this weight. Oh yeah, that battery mat is doing a really good job. I want to arm this damn thing in the house.
Welcome to OpenTN.
All right, I really don't suggest this, but we're gonna do it here, and then I'm gonna step away so that if anything were to go on in here, then yeah. And that is pretty close, so I might need to get a rubber band. All right, let's arm this for the first time and see what happens. That's a lot of air. Woo! All right, guys. I'm probably gonna get a rubber band to keep this balance lead out of the propellers. All right, I'm pretty psyched. Let's go and fly this thing for the first time. My first 5-inch quad. Let's go do it.